An interesting study from the Bible, word from word. Two brothers, and one of them raped his sister, and it's one of the Bible stories that we want to bring and teach the children in school. Are you all set? Welcome to you, and we're going to do a study in UFOs today. And I thought that would be something for a nice Christian church to do on a Sunday morning, and talk about a strange thing. What in the world is that? UFOs. Has anybody here, and I can't talk to you out there, has anybody here ever seen a UFO? Would you raise your hand? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 9. 9? That's pretty good. Yeah. And the rest of you probably won't admit it. You won't raise your hand. But you have seen something. You know, one time or another you've seen something. I was chased by green lights. That was out in, I can't tell you the Fort Dick story, but I mean, because nobody believes that one. But we were driving by there and there's some green lights chasing us. Anyhow, up in the air. But I saw, when we lived up in Point Pleasant, I saw a tremendous monstrosity. It was about 2 blocks long, hovering over and went down. But what are you seeing? You know, what is it? Now, there was a time, the stages of consciousness of antiquity were quite different than it is today, because there was a time in which people inhabited realms of consciousness in which they actually walked and encountered gods in their everyday business. I mean, say, well, how, you know, what the heck are you talking about? The meetings more or less were grasped more in the heart than they were in the intellect, but there was a time when people were not struck as being so, like we were just now, laughing about, does anybody ever see a UFO? There was a time when all of these things were just very normal. They were just a part of life in the ancient times. Now, in order to comprehend that, we've got to ascend into a realm of consciousness that's beyond what we call the normal. In order, if we're going to understand these things, if you're going to say, you know, do they exist? You'll never know until you're willing to come out of the nest or the cocoon you would of earthly bondage to the flesh and go up into a realm where possibly, and not only possibly, but probably, you'll have an encounter. What the ancients received in a dreamlike state and has been handed to us in what we call mythology, okay, can be touched by us in the state of meditation. Okay. And when the time is ripe, and the time is now, say that when we're united together, we can bring ourselves to the point of starting to establish an understanding about such things as UFOs. But it takes patience. It's not something that you can go out and say, I want to see a UFO, or I want to see this, or I want to see that. When you're ready, understanding comes. And that's a very important thing in all aspects of what we call spirituality. Because spirituality is nothing more than electricity. Okay? That's what it is. Electricity is a very normal thing. That's what spirituality is. There are no spooky things running around in your head, but there's electricity surging all through your body. And when this thing is set in a proper way, and we expose ourselves to these realms of electricity that are different than what we're normally exposed to, things happen. Things happen. Then you have to be patient. You have to be ready for it to happen, okay? The seasons change, the universe changes, the stars change, the planets change, you change. You change the way you think. Want to say something? The way you think and the way you act is changed by the angle of the electromagnetic fields that emanate from the universe. Comes in at this angle, you may have a depression. Comes in this angle, you may be very happy. Comes in maybe on that angle, God knows. But it's all these different angles. All of these different angles deliver messages to those parts of the brain. And in fact, the ancients knew that it was the angles of the electromagnetic fields that caused people to change the way they think. And actually, they knew they were angles of electricity. And the church, in order to get away from that, certainly couldn't tell you that it was angles of electricity that was doing this, so we changed them into, not angles, but we made them angels. But the angles are actually angels. Or the angels are actually angles. So if you have an electricity which stimulates a part of the brain and causes you to think differently, is that your guardian angel or your guardian angle? Did you say I'm telling you? Okay. So in other words, all of this is scientific fact. All of this. I mean, my God, the things that you have, that you walk around with today, which you would have considered something from the gods years ago. You have calculators and computers and all of these things. Oh, this is impossible. You can keep everybody's name you've ever known, everybody's telephone number, all their addresses. You can keep it in a little thing, push a button, and it's all there. Say, oh, it's ridiculous. Nothing like that could ever be. Now you don't even consider it. It was a miracle years ago. Now it's, what else is new? You're waiting for something new because, you know, you get tired of it. What's happened lately? But there was a time when we encountered each other and we could see not only the visible, but we could understand the invisible. We knew the other realm. It was very, very easy for us to understand the other realm. We just weren't limited to the physical realm. We knew the invisible, we knew the visible, and we knew that it was all part of the whole universe. Everything was one. There was nothing to be frightened of. It was normal. It became frightening when people told us you should be frightened. When you're told, it's just like you say, oh, don't go out. So we went out. Everything was fine. But we could have been scared to death to stay in our house because somebody said on the radio, don't go out. Things are going to happen. See? But when you go out, you find, well, gee, it wasn't so bad, and things didn't happen. And it's the same here. When you're told to be afraid, you're afraid. And when enough people get to be afraid, it becomes a traditional and becomes a doctrine. Don't do this. You can open your mind to devils, or all these horrible things are going to happen. Even though it's not true, you believe it is, and so that makes it so. When you come together in groups like we come here, you'll usually find a tendency for circles of 12 to develop. And we'll go into that at another time, but that's part of what we've known in the past and part of what's going on now. Because each of you play a zodiacal part. Everybody plays a zodiacal part. You're the movement of the stars acted out in physical bodies. Listen to what I said. You ought to write that one down. You are the movement of the stars acted out in physical bodies. And I'll tell you something else. You're not alone. And I know that for a fact. You're not alone. What the Starship Enterprise did on television for entertainment, the Kabbalah has been doing for spaceship enthusiasts for centuries. What I'm talking to you about is something that's been in your Bible and in the ancient books forever. Just nobody ever brings your attention to it. Because, see, in religion, we're not allowed to go into this part. We're only allowed, angels are fine, and Holy Spirit is fine, but we don't want to go into the logistics of this. You know, what is the reality of this? The Torah is filled with references that can only be called UFOs, all over the place. And we understand the meaning. We say, oh, well, what they're trying to tell us about, you know, lifting ourselves into a higher realm of consciousness, lifting ourselves above the bondages of the physical mind. And we understand that. But the point is, what were these things that provided the symbolic evidence to more or less tell us of these things that manifest? You know, we enter into the mysteries of the universe, and what did they see? What were they really seeing that they were writing? Did somebody see something, or did somebody say, well, I'll just call it? In other words, if, for instance, the Bible wants to talk to you about confusion, it talks about a desert. Jesus was in the desert. Doesn't mean he was in a desert. It means he was in confusion. But they use a desert to symbolize the confusion, okay? Water. You can use water to symbolize truth, but you're using water. What were these things that they were using to symbolize? Let me give you an example. Go to page 285. You're in 2 Samuel, 285. 2 Samuel, and go to 2 Samuel chapter 22. You should find that on page 285. Okay? And look at verse 11. And what does it say? And he rode upon a cherub, and he did fly, and he was seen upon the wings of the wind. What? What was it? What did this person, he was seen, somebody saw something flying. You can use it for a spirit. We know what that means. We know when we go to a spiritual one what is being said. But somebody saw something and put it in here. He was seen riding upon the wings of the wind. He did fly upon a cherub. What are you going to call these things? Call it a cherub. What I'm going to propose to you is that as you rise in human consciousness, you then come more deeply into the mysteries of the universe and our cosmic destiny. That is true. See, I'm going to show you. You could go to school, and I'm sure there were some young people here to go to school. Nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about this. Because unfortunately, we're only allowed to be scientific up to the point of the things that we can see. You're not allowed to delve into the science of what maybe we can't see, but what other people did see. They're witnesses to having seen something. The Bible's records of events that we're going to look at are coded presentation of extraterrestrial life which can assist lower form. Many of us, many have come here to assist. Now is the time. You see the storms? West Coast, East Coast, all over the world. Do you believe in Uranus? You should. What does he have to do? Hit you over the head? Does he have to dump the snow right on your head to get you to believe? It's always snowstorms. They get more and more and more violent. Earthquakes become more violent. Windstorms become more violent. Hurricanes become more violent because Uranus is spinning in the opposite direction, throwing everything topsy-turvy. Then you sit and you look at it. So we're going to explore ourselves in the possibilities which are contained in the Bible, the Zohar, and so forth. One of the first accounts is shown when Moses and the Israelites were traveling across the desert. Go to page 58. Exodus 13. And this is interesting stuff, see? Because remember, we understand there's a symbolism in all of this stuff, but I want you to look in this particular case at what was it that the writer was using as the symbol of spirit. What did they see? What in God's name were they looking at? Exodus chapter 13, verse 21. And it says in 13 and 21, "And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and night." And the Zohar explains the word Lord as an intelligent energy force. What was this energy? What was this energy they saw as a cloud? What was this energy they saw as light that was flashing or that was burning? What was it? What was hovering? What was it that was hovering above them? That they could, whoever they were, in no other ways explain a pillar, a cloud, a pillar of fire. See, whenever cosmic wisdom has visited this planet Earth, the power was misused. That's what happened at the time of Noah. It was a misuse of the power. Do you know who's misused the power that has been deposited on the earth? Religion. Misused it. Totally misused it. By keeping it, by depriving people of understanding the energy, by depriving people of understanding the electricity, by depriving people of understanding the statements of the ancients which talked about UFOs, which talked about the glory of the planets, the energy that moves the electromagnetic fields, by not telling people about the science and not telling people about what was the truth and the reality of the cosmos, this energy was misused. That's what happened at the time of Noah. That's what happened at the time of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. The Tower of Babel. All of these are stories about the energy which came down and was misused. And again, we come to the point where the power is falling and the age of Aquarius is pouring out that which is electromagnetic fields. How does it talk about it? Here is a point. And you're seeing it in the storms. You're seeing it in the way people think. You're seeing it. They just signed the peace agreement between Israel and Palestine and all of these kind of things. Unbelievable things have happened. And you've sat there and stared and never jumped up and down and tried to tell people, look, what the hell is happening? What happened to the Soviet Union? What happened to the wall? What happens in Ireland? What happens in all of these places where people are finally starting to sit down and where you have people who have been at each other's throats for centuries and centuries and centuries. I don't know why I'm signing this thing, but enough is enough. Because of the energy, because of the angles that are coming down out of the universe, and call them angels, they're angles of electromagnetic fields which are pumped down by this mighty planet Uranus, which is spinning itself into the house of Aquarius. That's why. It is the season of the universe. And so how is it reflected in the Bible? How is it given to you in the Bible? What does it say in the Bible to describe what's happening? Watch. Go to page 744. Page 744. And the rest of you go to the book of Joel. I hope you can find that. Book of Joel. It's right after Hosea, right before Amos. Okay? Joel. I want you to see how the Bible describes what is happening now as a scientific principle. Okay? Joel, you there? Chapter 2 and verse 28. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall have visions. What's happening today? What are you seeing today? The Spirit that's being poured out are the electromagnetic fields that are hitting people and things all over the universe. And people are doing exactly that. And when they prophesy, and when they have dreams and visions, the church is the first one to say, it's evil. It's a cult. It's of the devil. Don't get involved in it. It's the fulfillment. It is the Aquarian age pouring these things down upon all flesh. It is angles of electromagnetic fields, angles of electricity, and people are being touched by it. And even you come on and say, you can't think the way you used to think. You can't feel the way you used to feel. You've got to move yourself up into a higher realm. You've got to start to find out what life is about. You've got, one of the things, did any of you see the other day, Taro, the dog, was let out of the thing and it went home, You see, there is more than rules, and there is more than regulations, and there is more than laws. There is heart. There is forgiveness. There is compassion. And here is this dog, which they wanted to kill, which is on death row for 2 years. Oh, it was gonna swallow everybody up, according to this town. And the dog comes running and shaking his tail and licking everybody and kissing everybody and saying, wow, it didn't do what all the fear mongers had said it was going to do. And this here, the people that teach religion have no idea what this is going to do. And so when they look at, I will pour out my Spirit on all flesh, what is it? It's the pouring out of this electricity which is coming down during the Spirit of Aquarius. Electricity is intelligence. Do you know how intelligent electricity is? Electricity in and of itself is an energy. When it is then received by the proper receptor, it becomes intelligent. Don't you understand what I'm saying to you? In other words, if you are meditating and you open yourself up as a receptor, a part of your brain that has never been touched suddenly will be snapped on by this angle of electricity, and you become very intelligent, you become very wise, you become very enlightened, you become very aware, because you have opened yourself, you have allowed yourself through the meditation to give yourself above the thoughts of the mind, and the electricity touches you and you run with it. You're not afraid of it. You're not scared of it. Suddenly, it's just like this. Electricity can't sing. Electricity can't play music. Who was it? Vinny said he went and was Kataro. Well, what happens? When the electricity finds a receptor, then Kataro can play. See, the electricity goes into the box. Kataro's tape is in the box. The electricity makes everything move, and music plays. In the same way within you, there are receptors. There are receptors that know how to cure cancer. There are receptors that know how to cure depression. There are receptors that know how to bring ecology and love the whales and love the dolphins. There are receptors that know how to make this planet Earth, which has been made into a hell by religion, make it into the planet heaven. And those receptors are there and waiting to be touched by the angle of electricity, which is coming down now. The point is, will you make yourself available to it? For God's sakes, what are we talking? And back in that green book for 2 years, there's been stuff talking about melatonin. It cures cancer. And all of this stuff. So what do you see? 2 years later, you see people talking about it on CNN. 5 minutes, 10 minutes programs about the power of this new wonder drug, melatonin. And Jesus Christ said, melatonin is a skin lightener. And Jesus Christ said years ago, 2,000 years ago, if your eye be single, if you open up the pineal gland, your body will fill with light, which is the skin lightener, melatonin. Oh, and they all say you should do what Jesus said. Jesus is Lord. This is what I want you to do. The next time I say Jesus is Lord, ask him, how many times do you open yourself to melatonin? They know what you're talking about because they don't understand what he was talking about. They don't understand what he means or he ever meant. Doesn't matter, religion or denomination. Everyone on the earth, every living thing is going to be touched by this electricity. You're being touched by this electricity. That's why you feel the way you do. What in the world are you sitting here for? You wouldn't get any. You can't get these people on the street. Do you know what? Do you know how many people I was telling about? Do you know how many people write and they want the tapes and they live in Beechwood and they live in Bayville and they live in Manahawkin and they live in Tucker and they won't come near this place because they're scared to death of what somebody will say or they're scared to death of what their family will say or but they want the tapes. I had a girl and I showed Joan. And I won't even give you her name because but she lives in Bayville and she wrote, I've got to have my tape. I've got to have my tape. I didn't get a tape in January. I know I sent it back. Look, here's the postal thing to prove that I sent it back. Please send my tape. Please send. And Joan said, but she never comes. But she's so scared. But she wants it so bad that she wants this tape. Because she wants to hear. They want to hear. But they're so afraid to offend them. Okay? And I love to offend them. That's my life. To offend them. Do you know that was Jesus' life? That's all he lived for, to offend them. You can't do that in our church. The only time he ever went to church was to do that, do something offensive to them. Because that's the only time they'll pay any attention to you. Go to page 678. Let's take a look at a UFO. Page 678, and for the rest of you, it's the book of Ezekiel.
Ezekiel's wheels.
Look at Ezekiel 1, verse 1, last sentence. The heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. What Ezekiel sees is God's Word. If you saw it... Do you know what? Here's Ezekiel, and all the Christians carry this Bible under their arms. The Word of God is true. The Word of God is yes and amen. But if you saw the same thing that he saw, you would be an occultist, Satanist, and run out of their midst. Look what he saw. Look at verse 4. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was in it. And out of the midst there was a color of amber out of the midst of the fire. What's he looking at? What was he looking at coming out of this cloud? Well, there was something flying, and he couldn't identify it. You know what they call that? A UFO. And who said they saw it? The guy in the Bible. In verse 5, it says, they had the likeness of 4 living creatures. This was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. Look at verse 7. Their feet were straight. The sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. They sparkled like the color of burnished brass. Just think of the colors and just think of maybe a landing gear coming down. Just think of something, and all of a sudden this thing comes down. And it has maybe you know, do you ever see like a plane or something, and it can look like 2 eyes? But here you're going to see this ship, and then the landing gear comes down, and it looks like burnished brass or whatever, and this guy's looking up, and all the fire is shooting out and all this kind of business. Jeez. And look at verse 8. And they had the hands of a man under their wings. And the 4 had their faces and their wings. Go to verse 9. Their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went. They went everyone straight forward. In verse 10, it's interesting because now the writer has given these connection to the zodiac. So the four had the face of a man, Aquarius, the face of a lion, Leo, the face of an ox, Taurus, and the face of an eagle, Scorpio. Scorpio is two. It's the scorpion and the eagle. You know what that is, those four? Well, if you can get your hands on a real old Bible, the four Gospels each began with those four signs. One sign to each of the Gospels. The four signs of the zodiac. Okay? Here we go. Lift off. Look at verse 13. Their appearance was like burning coals of fire in the appearance of lamps. It went up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. Have you ever watching on television when they would have they would do the thrust burn, and the fire would shoot out, and they'd move this way, and then they have thrust moving that way, and so forth and so on. Watch this one. This is really interesting. Look at verse 14. And the living creature ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. Isn't that interesting? The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the beryl. I'm on verse 16. The four had one likeness. Their appearance and their work was at it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went upon their four sides, and they turned not when they went. And as for the wings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them. What were they?
Windows.
Sure. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Isn't that interesting? And look at verse 24. Verse 24 is pretty interesting. And when I went, I heard the noise of their wings like the noise of great waters, as the voice of the Almighty, the voice of speech, as the noise of a host. When they stood, they let down their wings. Can you imagine? You've seen the thundering noise as these things lift up. Go to page 684. Go to Ezekiel chapter 10. You can look at that another time, but Ezekiel chapter 10. Have you ever seen these rockets lift off and the smoke, the smoke pours and just covers everything? Look at Ezekiel chapter 10, verse 4. Then the glory of the Lord went up from the cherub and stood over the threshold of the house. And the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of the Lord's glory. Can you just see this ship taking off and the smoke and all of this stuff? And what about the sound? Verse 5. And the sound of the cherubim's wings was heard even to the outer court as the voice of Almighty God when he speaks. And then what was left? And it came to pass that when he had commanded the man clothed with linen, saying, take fire from between the wheels. In verse 7, and one cherub stretched forth his hand from between the cherubims unto the fire that was between the cherubims. What else is it? Tell me what it is. What is it that this guy saw? What is it that made a visitation? What is it with wheels and this tremendous fire and this color of brass that landed on the earth? What is it? He didn't know. He said it's God. Well, maybe it is. Maybe that's for another time. That's for another time. When we realize that the human mind supersedes and surpasses physical energy, how far are we from manifesting something like he manifested it? You want to sit here and look at nothing until you drop dead? I mean, the closest you get to anything is CNN. This is it? Or are you willing now to take one step beyond, as they used to say? Because it is just, it's close as your breath as to what can be revealed to you, and what will be revealed to you when you're willing and ready to be trusted with it. Outer space, inner space. The Zohar of Kabbalah interprets Ezekiel's vision as the energy intelligence is used and immediately disappears and another craft appears. No one can tolerate or remain fast in its presence. So people see a UFO and then all of a sudden it's gone. That's what I've done. I'm sure those things that you may have seen, that's what you've done. Somewhere else, they depart and appear. Let me show you page 766. 766 is the book of Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 5. Look what this guy saw. Then I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll. Was this a bagel or what that was flying? He lifted his eyes and he saw a flying roll with Swiss hanging out the side. The guy says to him, "What do you see?" I says, "I see a flying roll. There's a roll flying up there." He saw something flying. I don't care what it was. He saw something flying. And he measured it. It was 20 cubits and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. It was 30 feet by 15 feet. 30 feet long, 15 feet wide. That's what this guy saw flying. He looked up and he saw something that was about 30 feet long and 15 feet wide flying. And a roll. So I would assume it was... Hey, you know what? Wimpy. Wimpy! Wimpy, he saw one of these. A flying roll. 30 feet long by 15 feet wide. That would be pretty good, huh? See, the secret of this is, let me tell you what the secret is. These things appear within your own intelligence. If your mind is open, you'll see. If it's not, you won't. Don't worry about it. If you're in touch with the right side, you're open to cosmic things. If you're not, you're not. Page 665, the book of Jeremiah. But you see, you can't do this in church, can you? You can't do this in religion. You're not allowed to see anything. There is nothing. Everything comes after you die. How are you going to see it after you die? All these guys weren't dead when they saw this. Are they all occult Satanists, nuts? Maybe. I don't know. But they're in the Bible. And according to all of the religionists, this is God's holy word. How many times have you ever gone to church before you ever come here that they talked about UFOs and all of this stuff that you see? Nobody's ever talked. You can't talk about that because you're not allowed to talk about that. Why? Because it's real, and religion does not deal with things that are real. What we're dealing with are things that are real. Your mind is real, your consciousness is real, the electricity in there is real, the universe is real, the zodiac is real, and none of that stuff you're allowed to talk about. You're allowed to talk about stuff that is not real. Look, Jeremiah chapter 48, are you there? Look what God says. Verse 40. Thus saith the Lord, he shall fly as an eagle, and shall spread his wings over Moab. He shall fly as an eagle, and he shall spread his wings over Moab. Doesn't mean like that. As an eagle. He didn't say he would be an eagle. I'll fly like an eagle. And I'll tell you something. What do you think take one of these ships that take off from Fort McGuire or these things with the rockets on them and shoot it over one of these things. How are they going to describe this? How are they going to describe what they saw? What are all those landing fields in Peru and all of that stuff? Does anybody ever stop to think, gee, maybe something happened here? How come they got things carved out in the ground that you can't see except from the air? But you're not allowed to talk about that. Why don't you have a discussion about that at your Bible study at the local church? You can't talk about things like that. Can't deal with that. Now I'm going to read you something that was written 3,000 years ago. It's from the Zohar of Kabbalah. This is Jewish, written by rabbis, Jewish rabbis. A little far out, like the rabbi here, but still Jewish rabbis. Get this. Now listen, this is not being read to you from something from one step beyond. This is read for you thousands of years ago, written by Jewish rabbis who saw things other people didn't see. Listen very carefully. The Metatron angel rules over and controls a fleet of 4,500 groups. 9. In addition to 4,500 groups, there are 45 million energy light intelligences. Each time the group departs, 1,500 galaxies tremble. A flaming fire follows Metatron's departure from and re-entry to their base. That's written 3,000 years ago by Jewish rabbis. Yes?
Metatron is an angel.
An angel.
It's a Jewish angel.
Jewish
Angel
angel.
of abundance.
She said Metatron is a Jewish angel. Okay, so the Jewish angel. But listen to what happens here. A flaming fire follows Metatron's departure from a re-entry and re-entry to her base. Okay. The secret of the mystical names are carved on their ship, and they control and direct extraterrestrial activity. This is written thousands of years ago by religious people. What is it? Who is it? Who are they? The things that maybe you saw. Who was driving? Who was flying these things that pilots say they saw and all? Who are these people? Who are these things? Who are these beings? Go to page 618. The rest of you go to Isaiah chapter 60. See, we're late. Well, where are you going, snowing it? I'm almost done. Who are they? Isaiah chapter 60, verse 8. You there? Read it. Who are these that fly as a cloud and as the doves to their windows? Who are they? It's amazing. Is anybody out there, according to the Zohar, Kabbalah? Yes, there is. And the Zohar maintains that human beings control extraterrestrial activity. What you call aliens are advanced entities who travel in the form of pure, intelligent energy that moves faster than the speed of light. You know, what's the sense? What's the sense of being born? What's the sense of getting involved with religion? What's the sense of curling up and dying when all of this stuff is going on? Why not get involved in it? Why not find out about it? Why not open your eyes to it? Why not open your mind to it? Why don't you, bust out of the morass of all of the stuff that you've been taught and say, there is a universe here. You're invited to be part of it. The excitement of it. Because they're coming. And some are here. Shouldn't you recognize? Shouldn't you be friendly? You should. It moves fast. I'm going to show you. You ever hear? You want to hear Star Wars? Star Wars? Come with me. Page 733, Book of Daniel. Give you a little Star Wars as we get out of here. Daniel chapter 9. Yeah, while I was speaking in prayer, verse 21, I'm sorry. Daniel chapter 9, verse 21. Yeah, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. Now, here's a point where this being called Daniel goes into a psychic trance meditatively and beckons a light being to come and touch. And it doesn't come. Go to chapter 10, verse 13. Go to verse 12. Then he said unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you did set your heart to understand and to chasten yourself before God, your words were heard, and I am come for your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. And then I remained there. It took me 3 weeks to get here. because I was stopped by another energy force and there was an encounter. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? Who was it? Darth Vader? I'm telling you. You watch sometimes Joseph Campbell and he will tell you about that Star Wars program was actually a myth of this, the reality of the energies that are loose in the... Here was this energy coming and it was stopped, and it took 3 weeks until another energy came and was able to break the hold of the negative energy, and then it was able to arrive.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah. I'm talking to you about a real thing. It says in Psalm 689, the earth shook, the heavens dropped at the presence of God, and even Sinai itself was moved. So you want to use the Bible, another ancient text, properly, and the words will establish a method to help you trace the origin and the evolution of the universe and what's going on today. You may ask, why have not other civilizations with the universe communicated to it? Did you ever hear these people say, how come these things always appear to somebody in some strange, quiet place? How come they don't come downtown? How come? Because they don't come anywhere. They're manifested by that person in the strange, dark place. You never manifest. Do you ever see here when there's just a few people and there's nothing really going on and it's dark in here and the music, the mouse comes out? Yeah, that's the crop things.
Crop circles.
Yeah, crop circles. It always happens in those quiet places because, remember, it's not coming from the outside. It's coming as a projector from the inside. Projected from the inside out. Spaceships, UFOs, and so forth. If you can rise to the trembling electricity of your consciousness and touch the switch on the right wall, then you'll be part. Then you'll know. Let's do this last scripture and then that's the end of it. We're done. Page 319, 2 Kings, chapter 2, and verse 11. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. You hear about that. When you hear about people that say they were taken up in a spaceship and all of that stuff, it's written in the Bible. It's just time not to believe or disbelieve, but it's time to start analyzing the things that have been said to you and the things that are being said to you now, and be open to experience and be free to take part. But I'll tell you something right now. The less meditation you do, the further you are away from being touched by these beings. The more you do, the closer you get, until finally you're entering right into their presence and they're into yours. And those things which are recorded here are not set to destroy the earth. The people who live on this earth have destroyed the earth. You haven't heard of UFOs dropping atomic bombs. We've identified precisely everyone that's dropped an atomic bomb. You haven't heard of UFOs shelling markets in Bosnia. You haven't heard of UFOs shooting across the borders in Ireland or in Israel or wherever. We know exactly who's doing that. It's not UFOs. It's not beings from another dimension. But yet you're taught to be afraid of beings from another dimension and trust the people here who are doing all the carnage and killing and raping and looting. The light beings who are circling this planet and are about to make their move through Uranus are magnificent saviors of this planet. It is the will of the creative force that this planet not be destroyed, that the animals not be tortured, that the children not be set upon and have their minds twisted by the traditions and the doctrines of this age. It is the will, and so a length of time was allotted for people to stop. They have not stopped, and so they're being stopped. And the way they're being stopped is the receptors in the brains and in the minds of people all over the universe are being forcibly interfered with by electromagnetic fields, by angles, and these people are suddenly being forced to act in ways that they wouldn't act. You can take a lion and attach an electrode to a part of the brain and change it into a pussycat. That's what's have to be done. It would have been better if people could have, of their own will, have seen and understood the truth and stopped the killing all by themselves. But they choose not to. And they weren't allowed to do that because of the leaderships in the churches and the governments who thrill themselves with their egos of patriotism and their traditions, and so they led everybody into this path of hell. Now the beings who are descending upon you are forcibly changing that. If they don't forcibly change it, then this mighty, magnificent earth, which was created as a jewel of the universe, would be destroyed by people. And the universe will not allow earth to be destroyed by people. And so they will have to be turned into robots. And they will have to be made to do what they couldn't do of their own free will. You have opportunity of your own free will. That's why you're here. And I know what I'm talking about because I know of these people. It's up to you. If you can either believe or not believe, that's irrelevant. But you've seen the earth, you've lived upon the earth, and you've seen the destruction of it. You've seen what's happened to the children. You've seen what happens to teenagers. Teenage suicide is the second leading killer of teenagers. You have to have drug outreach centers. You have more drug outreach centers than you have AMPs. And you've dropped atomic bombs. You've blown people to bits. And on this magnificent planet, no more beautiful place could be given for people to live than was created for you here. And it has been systematically destroyed, polluted, and revenged by the same people who were given to make it into something beautiful. And so now the instructors have got to come back and make it by force. And I would suggest to you that the ones who are coming are those who you should join with, and you do that through your meditation. Stuff is told to me daily. And I've never told you anything that I didn't show you some confirmation, because I'm not here to tell you things that, you know, you're going to think I'm loonier than I am because you think from a different perspective than I think. I'm very human, like you're very human, but there's other parts to all of us. And I'm trying to tell you, and everything that I've ever told you from this room or the other rooms, you know has been true. And there's not one thing that has not come the way we said it was going to come. And what's coming is the beauty, the Renaissance, those who will save the children, the elderly, those who will return that which was stolen from the oppressed and give it back to them, the animals, nature, all of this, they've come to save it and make it the way the Creator wanted it to be. Those are the ones whose side you want to be on. And as it gets stronger and stronger, just like the storms are only an indication of the power, which is stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, make yourself stronger in your meditation. Be part of it. Be part of them. Be part of us together in the circles of 12. Are we still on?
Yeah.
Good night.